My brother Marcus manipulated our father into transferring 80% of the company to him. Our 40-year family business became his overnight. But what he didn't know was that I had been documenting his illegal activities for 2 years. 6 months later, the FBI showed up at his door, and Marcus received an 8-year prison sentence. My name is David Rodriguez. I'm 38 years old, and I just witnessed the most devastating family betrayal in our company's 4-decade history transform into the most satisfying justice I've ever experienced. But what Marcus didn't understand was that stealing a family legacy through manipulation and fraud would ultimately destroy not just our relationship, but his entire future. Standing in the federal courthouse 6 months after Marcus had taken control of Rodriguez Construction, watching him being led away in handcuffs after receiving an 8-year sentence for embezzlement and elder abuse, I felt the complex satisfaction of justice served, even when it meant my own brother's downfall. According to Marcus's version of events, he had been protecting the family business from David's incompetence and disloyalty. The company that had been stolen and then destroyed was Rodriguez Construction, a mid-sized commercial building firm that our father Antonio had built from nothing into a $15 million annual revenue business over 40 years of dedication and sacrifice. To understand how Marcus had been able to manipulate our 68-year-old father into signing over 80% of his life's work, and how I had been able to expose his criminal operation while securing justice for our family, I need to explain the 2-year investigation I had conducted and the evidence that had ultimately sent my brother to federal prison. Rodriguez Construction had been founded in 1983 by our father Antonio Rodriguez, who had immigrated from Mexico, with nothing but construction skills and an unshakable work ethic. Over 4 decades, he had built the company into one of the most respected commercial contractors in our region. This business is my legacy for both my sons, Dad had always told us. Rodriguez Construction will provide for your families long after I'm gone. I had joined the company full-time in 2010 after completing my business degree, starting as a project manager and working my way up to vice president of operations. Marcus had joined in 2012 after a series of failed ventures, taking on the role of chief financial officer. I want both my boys involved in the business, Dad had said when Marcus had asked for the CFO position. Family businesses work best when family members have complementary skills. For the first 8 years, our partnership had been productive. I had focused on operations, client relationships, and project management, while Marcus had handled finances, accounting, and administrative functions. David handles the building, Marcus handles the books, Dad had often joked. Between the two of them, they've got every aspect of the business covered. But by 2020, I had begun noticing irregularities in our financial reporting and discrepancies between what Marcus reported to Dad and what I observed in our actual operations. Project budgets that didn't match actual costs. Vendor payments that seemed inflated compared to services received. Cash flow reports that didn't align with our accounts receivable and project completion schedules. Marcus, these numbers don't look right, I had mentioned during one of our quarterly reviews. The profit margins on the Westfield project seemed too low given our actual costs. You focus on the construction side. I'll handle the financial analysis, Marcus had replied. Different projects have different margin structures that you might not understand. I understand construction costs pretty well after 10 years in this business. Understanding costs and understanding financial reporting are different things. David, trust me to handle my area of expertise. It was Marcus's dismissive attitude and his reluctance to explain financial discrepancies that had first made me suspicious about his management of the company finances. The second warning sign had been Marcus's increasing influence over Dad's business decisions and his attempts to marginalize my role in strategic planning. Dad, I think we should consider expanding into residential construction. I had suggested during a family business meeting. The commercial market is getting more competitive, and residential would diversify our revenue streams. That's not a good strategic direction, Marcus had interjected before Dad could respond. Residential construction has different profit margins and would require operational changes that could hurt our core business. I've researched the market extensively, and I think, David, Marcus has the financial background to evaluate strategic decisions, Dad had said. We should listen to his analysis. This pattern had continued for months, with Marcus positioning himself as the strategic expert while undermining my operational knowledge and family business experience. The third warning sign had been Marcus's suggestions that Dad should formalize succession planning, and his subtle implications that I might not be committed to the long-term success of the family business. Dad, we should think about estate planning and business succession, Marcus had said during a family dinner. You're 66 years old, and we need to ensure the business continues smoothly when you decide to retire. I'm not ready to retire yet, but you're right that we should plan ahead. The key is making sure the business is managed by family members who are fully committed to its success. Marcus had continued, glancing meaningfully at me. Some people might be tempted to pursue other opportunities if they get attractive offers. What other opportunities? I had asked. I've heard that Thompson Construction has been trying to recruit experienced project managers. I just want to make sure Dad knows that family loyalty should be the top priority. I had never been contacted by Thompson Construction or any other competitor, but Marcus's implication that I was potentially disloyal had been the beginning of a systematic campaign to undermine my relationship with Dad. It was at this point, in early 2021, that I had decided to begin documenting Marcus's activities and investigating the financial irregularities I had been noticing. The investigation I had conducted over the following 2 years had revealed the scope of Marcus's criminal enterprise and the methods he had been using to steal from the family business while positioning himself to inherit control. Working discreetly and consulting with a forensic accountant and a white-collar crime attorney, I had discovered that Marcus had been embezzling approximately $300,000 annually from Rodriguez Construction through a sophisticated scheme involving fake vendors, inflated invoices, and offshore bank accounts. Your brother has created an elaborate system for siphoning money from the business, forensic accountant Lisa Chun had explained after reviewing the financial records I had collected. He's been submitting invoices from shell companies that he controls, then transferring the payments to accounts he manages. How long has this been going on? Based on the patterns we can identify, at least 3 years. The total amount stolen appears to exceed $900,000. Why hasn't my father noticed the missing money? Because Marcus controls the financial reporting. He's been manipulating the books to hide the theft while showing your father reports that make the business appear profitable. The evidence Chun had helped me compile included bank records, falsified invoices, documentation of shell companies Marcus had created, and email communications that showed his coordination of the embezzlement scheme. But the most disturbing aspect of Marcus's operation wasn't just the financial theft. It was his systematic manipulation of our aging father to position himself as the sole heir to the business. Marcus has been engaging in what legally constitutes elder abuse. Attorney Patricia Martinez had explained after reviewing the evidence. He's been using psychological manipulation and potentially fraudulent documentation to influence your father's business decisions. What kind of manipulation? Isolation tactics, where he discourages your father from consulting with you about business decisions. Disinformation campaigns, where he provides false information about your loyalty and competence. Financial exploitation, where he uses his position as CFO to hide his theft while blaming business problems on external factors. The documentation I had gathered included recordings of family business meetings where Marcus had made false claims about my performance. emails between Marcus and his co-conspirators discussing strategies for gaining control of the business, and financial records showing how he had been hiding his embezzlement while undermining my credibility. The culmination of Marcus's manipulation campaign had come in March 2023, when he had convinced Dad to sign documents transferring 80% ownership of Rodriguez Construction to him while reducing my ownership to 20%. David has been talking about leaving the business, Marcus had told Dad. I think we should restructure ownership to reflect long-term commitment. I'm prepared to take full responsibility for the company's future. Has David said he wants to leave? Dad had asked. He hasn't said it directly, but I've overheard phone conversations where he's discussed other opportunities. I don't think his heart is in the family business anymore. This conversation, which I later learned about through Dad's own recollection, had been based entirely on lies. I had never discussed leaving Rodriguez Construction and had never been approached by other companies about employment opportunities. But Marcus's manipulation had been effective. Within a week, Dad had signed ownership transfer documents that gave Marcus control of the business while relegating me to a minority partner with no decision-making authority. I'm sorry to do this, David, Dad had told me when presenting the new ownership structure. But Marcus has convinced me that this is best for the family business. Dad, this doesn't make sense. I've never said anything about leaving the company. Marcus says you've been exploring other options. If that's true, then we need to plan for the business to continue without you. Marcus is lying to you. I have no interest in leaving Rodriguez Construction. I don't know what to believe anymore. Marcus says you've been undermining him and trying to turn me against his financial management. The conversation had been heartbreaking because I could see that Dad was confused and being manipulated. But Marcus's campaign of disinformation had been so systematic that Dad no longer trusted his own judgment about family relationships. However, what Marcus didn't know was that I had been preparing for exactly this scenario for 2 years, and his ownership grab had provided the perfect opportunity to expose his criminal operation. Within 24 hours of the ownership transfer, I had contacted the FBI white-collar-crime division and provided them with a comprehensive evidence package I had been developing since 2021. This is one of the most thoroughly documented embezzlement cases we've seen. FBI agent Sarah Williams had told me during our initial meeting, "Your brother has been running a sophisticated financial crime operation that involves multiple federal violations." What kinds of violations? Wire fraud, mail fraud, money laundering, elder abuse, and tax evasion. The evidence you've collected provides a clear foundation for federal prosecution. The FBI investigation had moved quickly once they had reviewed my documentation. Within 3 months, they had secured additional evidence through bank records, interviewed co-conspirators, and built a comprehensive criminal case against Marcus. Your brother's embezzlement scheme was more extensive than even you realized. Agent Williams had updated me during the investigation. We've identified over $1.2 million in stolen funds and evidence of additional crimes involving tax fraud and money laundering. The arrest had come in June 2023, when federal agents had executed search warrants at Marcus's home, his office, and the accounts of his shell companies. Marcus Rodriguez, you're under arrest for embezzlement, wire fraud, and elder abuse, Agent Williams had announced as they led Marcus away in handcuffs from the Rodriguez construction office. This is ridiculous, Marcus had protested. David is trying to frame me because he's jealous that Dad chose me to run the business. Mr. Rodriguez, we have extensive financial evidence and documentation of your criminal activities. You have the right to remain silent. The federal trial had been swift and decisive. The evidence I had collected, combined with the FBI's additional investigation, had proven Marcus's guilt beyond any reasonable doubt. The defendant systematically stole over $1.2 million from his family's business while manipulating his elderly father to gain control of the company, federal prosecutor Jennifer Walsh had said during her opening statement. This represents not just financial crime, but a betrayal of family trust that constitutes elder abuse. The evidence presented during the trial had included bank records, falsified invoices, recordings of Marcus's lies to Dad, and testimony from the forensic accountant who had helped analyze the embezzlement scheme. Marcus Rodriguez created an elaborate criminal enterprise designed to steal from his own family while positioning himself to inherit the business he was destroying. Prosecutor Walsh had continued. Marcus was convicted on all charges and sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. He was also ordered to pay $1.4 million in restitution to Rodriguez Construction and was permanently banned from serving as a corporate officer in any business. But for our family, Marcus's conviction had been only the beginning of a long healing process. Dad had been devastated to learn that his own son had been stealing from the business and manipulating him for years. "I can't believe I fell for his lies," Dad had said after the trial. "I should have trusted you, David. You were always the honest one." Dad, Marcus was very sophisticated in his manipulation. Even I didn't realize the full extent of what he was doing until I spent 2 years investigating. How do we move forward from this? We rebuild the business together, and we make sure that Rodriguez Construction continues to be the legacy you always wanted it to be. The business recovery had taken time, but with the stolen money recovered through restitution, and with Marcus's criminal activities ended, Rodriguez Construction had returned to profitability within a year. It's ironic that Marcus's attempt to steal the business actually made it stronger. Dad had observed during our first profitable quarter after his conviction. Your investigation exposed problems that we've now fixed. 2 years after Marcus's conviction, Rodriguez Construction was generating $18 million in annual revenue, 20% higher than before the embezzlement had been discovered. Sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the strongest recoveries. I had reflected while reviewing our latest financial statements with Dad, the brother who had thought he could manipulate our father and steal our family legacy had ultimately provided the catalyst for making our business stronger and our family relationship more honest. Sometimes the people who tried to destroy what you've built end up showing you exactly how valuable it was and how much it's worth fighting to protect. And sometimes the most painful family betrayals lead to the most important family reconciliations once the truth finally comes to light.